Women and War, a Remembrance Day Tribute. Heritage Productions is a non-profit, volunteer organization that has a passion for vintage clothing. For over 30 years, we have been showcasing our large collection of authentic and reproduction garments by conducting fashion shows in care facilities and other venues. Due to recent COVID-19 restrictions, we have been unable to present our shows in person. Therefore, we have produced this video, which we hope you will enjoy as much as we have in making it. Heritage Productions presents a Remembrance Day tribute to all the women whose lives were impacted by war. Since fashion is dictated by history, our models are pleased to show you how women's lives and their fashions were changed by their wartime experiences. Perhaps the most significant contribution for women in any conflict is in their role as nurses. Military nursing had its beginnings in the Crimean War. The organizing and training of women for battle nursing began with Florence Nightingale in Britain and soon found its way to Canada. Elaine is dressed as the Lady with the Lamp, wearing a white apron over her plain black dress. The white collar and cuffs are removable for easy laundering. She has her hair covered with a white veil cap. So many women have had to watch as their loved ones went off to war in the service of their country. How hard it must have been to bid farewell to their sweethearts, husbands, sons, and daughters. War has its terrible casualties. When women at home received the dreadful news of the death of a loved one, they of course went into mourning. During Victorian times, this required wearing all black. These widow's weeds, as they were called, were worn for a full year, following the death of a loved one. This sad lady is in full mourning. Notice the bonnet with a black veil to cover her face and hide her tears. The full skirt is typical of the times. She is carrying her prayer book and a photo of her son. After the first year of mourning, women went into half mourning. Mauve or gray could be worn. Gradually, more trim and lace were added to the dress over time. At the turn of the century, Canadians were involved in the Boer War. A volunteer force of 7,000 men and 8 Canadian nurses served in South Africa. Kathy is writing a letter to her husband, who is at the front. Kathy's elaborate vest is made using soutache ribbon and lace over a foundation. Beneath it, she is wearing a white blouse, called a waist. It too has a myriad of inset lace and ribbons. The 5-panel skirt is made of hard-wearing Bengaline jacquard. Houses of this era were poorly heated, so wearing many layers would ensure the wearer was warm as well as stylish. The Great War, as it was then called, started for Canada when, on August 14, 1914, Britain declared war in response to the German invasion of Belgium. The Empire went to war with a spirit of light-hearted optimism. The boys would be home by Christmas. and Canadian men from Victoria to Halifax rushed to sign up. Canadian women were also anxious to contribute to the war effort. Over the course of the war, over 3,000 Canadian nurses volunteered their services. Nurses who served in the First World War were called nursing sisters. Most were single, between the ages of 21 and 38, and earned $4 per day. For their courage and compassion, they received the admiration of many soldiers. The uniform here, on loan from the Ashton Armory Museum, is a service dress which would have been worn on the wards. The men on the wards nicknamed their nurses Bluebirds because of the uniform color. The skirt and jacket are made of sturdy blue cotton, while the veil, collar, cuffs, and apron were all white and starched, worn with thick black stockings and either boots or shoes, depending on the amount of mud. All the military details of this uniform are original. Organized by the Canadian Red Cross and St. John Ambulance, voluntary aid detachments, or VADs, worked as nurses' aides in field hospitals and convalescent hospitals across Canada and in Great Britain. The over 2,000 women who joined were not paid and came from the upper and middle classes. The men under their care showed their appreciation by declaring that VAD actually stood for Very Adorable Darlings. Gail's Red Cross VAD uniform consists of a long skirt and blue blouse, with a white apron and a cap made from a square of linen tied at the back. Many women helped the war effort as nurses. Dr. Helen Hansen served as a doctor. Dr. Hansen first served with the Auxiliary Hospital Unit in Antwerp and later with the Royal Army Medical Corps, holding the honorary rank of captain. Here she is wearing a frock coat and a shorter skirt so she can tromp through the mud attending to her patients. Being a strong, intelligent woman, Dr. Hansen was also a suffragette. The women's suffrage movement in Canada was a decades-long struggle and was met by strong opposition.
Go home!
Suffrage for all!
Women in the vote! Women in the vote! Votes for women! Votes for women! Elaine is wearing a feminine white blouse with lace trims, a warm cotton velvet skirt in burgundy, and a velvet vest with a soft collar. Her body banner and hat band display the three colors of the women's suffragette movement: white for purity, purple for loyalty, and green or gold for hope. Green, white, and violet, GWV, also stands for Give Women the Vote. These suffragettes' outfits reflect the practical attire adopted by the many women who are now working in shops and offices, replacing the local men in service. The waistlines are high, the hems at the ankle. Hairstyles, too, are simple. Long hair is swept back into a fetching knot under modest hats. In 1917, amidst the tremendous reconfiguration of labor practices on the home front, the movement for women's suffrage won a major victory with the passage of the Wartime Elections Act, which granted some women the right to vote in federal elections.
Hooray! At last! Woo!
We did it! We did it!
The First World War had a major impact on almost everyone. Clothing and fashions changed significantly during this time, reflecting the changing roles taken on by women. The corsets and tight hobble skirts of the Edwardian era vanished, making way for clothes that were more practical to wear. Here is Kathy in an opulent evening ensemble from before the war. This rich rust fabric is perfect to wear to the theater. It features a slip-on tunic over a raised waist dress with a long tapered skirt called a hobble skirt for obvious reasons. In contrast, Karen shows a post-war garment that is much more comfortable. This high-waisted skirt with deep drapes on each hip is the very latest fashion for 1918. The matching bolero jacket is softly draped, weighted in front and back with beaded tassels. It is worn with an original armistice blouse in sheer muslin. It is representative of the new post-war styles: shorter skirt, looser, non-corseted shape, muted practical color, and serviceable fabric, suitable for all seasons. The war to end all wars finally came to a close with the armistice of November 1918. Here is Joni looking forward to the return of the troops. These original pieces from 1918 were typical of the time, when all thoughts and energy were focused on the war effort. The wool jacket is cut in panels to save fabric and is devoid of trim. The corduroy skirt is also a minimal cut, the fullness replaced with soft drape and shorter length. Her hat, reminiscent of a military tricorn, is popular just now. Hitching a ride home with those returning troops was an unwelcome visitor, the so-called Spanish flu. Unlike most strains of influenza, this one targeted the young and healthy and claimed the lives of an estimated 50,000 Canadians. Considering our own experience with COVID-19, we can appreciate the extraordinary efforts required by the healthcare workers of that time. Linda is wearing a warm wool cape over an original one-piece uniform in green cotton. It features buttons down the front, under a placket closing, and has a detachable collar, sleeve protectors, cap, and a full-length apron. The post-war period allowed women to return to more traditional pursuits. Here is Karen using her newly acquired single treadle sewing machine to make a so-called one-hour dress. The simple, unfitted styles of the 20s meant that many women could easily create their own garments. Karen is wearing a one-hour dress that she made from measurements and a flat folding technique instead of traditional pattern pieces. This drop waist was the foundation of the 20s comfortable style. trimming and embellishments made each garment unique. In this case, Karen's pink frock has 3/4 length sleeves, a layered skirt, and a large fabric flower at the hip. In 1939, war broke out again. The first 2 women's services were created as auxiliaries to the Air Force and the Army in 1941, and some 50,000 Canadian women eventually enlisted. This is a uniform nursing sisters in the Royal Canadian Army Medical Corps wore throughout the Second World War. It is an original service dress, also on loan from the Ashton Armory Museum, located here in Victoria. The veil is made of a starched, semi-sheer fabric, cut in a square, then folded into a triangle and secured at the back of the head. The cotton apron is also starched. It covers and protects the skirt and jacket, which is made of sturdy blue cotton. Collar and cuffs, sensible shoes and stockings complete the uniform. Their traditional cape is navy wool, lined in maroon, the colors of the Corps, whose motto was, "We hasten to aid the soldier." Of the 3,656 nursing sisters who served in this Corps, 107 lost their lives as a result of enemy action, and a further 491 were wounded. The Canadian Women's Army Corps, CWAC, was a non-combatant branch of the Canadian Army, established to release men from non-combat roles as Canada expanded its war effort. Its members served as cooks, nurses, seamstresses, drivers, and mechanics. The hip-length jacket of summer weight fabric has brass buttons featuring the helmeted head of Athena. The khaki-colored wool-peaked cap has a badge with 3 maple leaves. As men left to fight on the front, women took over their jobs in factories, offices, and farms. Rosie the Riveter was the star of a government campaign aimed at recruiting female workers for munitions factories. The iconic poster shows Rosie flexing her bicep while exclaiming, "We can do it!" Rosie wears a dark blue one-piece coverall with her hair kept safely out of the way in a red and white polka dot scarf. Her accessories include socks, boots, and a metal lunch bucket. Elaine is also doing her bit by working in a munitions factory. Bomb girls wore practical clothing with their hair covered for safety. Here, patriotic colors of red, white, and blue show support for the war effort. As a bomb girl, she risked her life in support of the European front. And after work, she relaxed at the local canteen with Rosie over a wee drop, a good way to keep up morale. Many Canadian women took over the family farm in the essential production of food. In England, the British government formed the Women's Land Army, a volunteer group who became known as the Land Girls. By 1944, supplemented by conscription, the Land Army had over 80,000 members. Our Land Girl is wearing a typical attire to work outdoors. Belted overalls, sturdy boots, a kerchief for her hair, and the official shirt with tie and green sweater. She's just dug up a truck full of potatoes. Well done! Another important role for women during wartime was in clerical positions, such as stenographers, switchboard operators, and secretaries. This two-piece suit is called a utility suit. Utility fashions were designed to meet strict rationing regulations due to shortages of fabric and labor during the war. Less fabric was needed in the construction of this skirt and jacket. Trim is sparse and the fabric is durable. The war has already lasted longer than expected, so everyone was required to make do and mend. Katja is looking very businesslike in a tailored suit jacket with covered buttons and cuffs. The skirt has smart box pleats. A crisp white blouse and brooch complete her office attire. On the home front, many women's groups got involved in the war effort by knitting socks and scarves, rolling bandages, and putting together packages for POWs. Gail and Veronica are off to a Red Cross meeting, wearing their Canadian Red Cross Services volunteer pins. Knit dresses were popular during the war. This lovely short-sleeved dress is 100% wool in a bright Kelly green. Gail has added a fur collar as a stylish touch, and a small velour hat completes the look. She carries her bag with her knitting needles and yarn, ready for her afternoon as a Red Cross volunteer. Veronica's dress represents the motto, "Fashion on the ration." The fabric is rayon, developed in the 30s to replace silks, wool, and cottons that were all needed now for the war effort. Made in a pared down style, this dress has short sleeves, a narrow skirt, shorter hem, and no pleats, tucks, or trim. The print is muted with hints of military green. It has shoulder pads and is worn with a Glengarry style wedge cap. Since silk stockings would have been hard to find, she has used an eyebrow pencil to draw seam lines on her legs. Working as a war correspondent would have been a very interesting and challenging job. Her outfit had to look professional while being both comfortable and practical. Wearing a tailored white blouse softened by a silk scarf at the neck, cuffed wool trousers, and an English tweed jacket, Linda looks the part, both competent and capable. A fedora hat, leather gloves, and spectator shoes complete her outfit. The great news in 1945 was the end of the war. Women dressed in their very best to welcome home their loved ones. This original 40s velvet coat is called a clutch. It has no buttons, collar, or trims, the perfect accessory for an afternoon event or a dressy gala affair. Small novelty hats were popular at this time. Karen's is encrusted with multicolored stones and net. This full-length 40s squirrel coat has plenty of style detail. A small stand-up collar, wider cut sleeves eased into cuffs, and designer buttons down the front. She wears it with an outstanding original brown felt hat. After the end of the war, women who had married Canadian servicemen were granted free passage to Canada by the Canadian government. More than 47,000 war brides and nearly 22,000 children arrived and tried to adjust to a new country. They were issued with a Canadian cookbook and sent on their way. Carol is wearing a long princess-line coat in wool tweed, sturdy shoes, and a stylish hat. After a rough sea voyage and a long train journey, she is looking forward to finally reaching her new home and introducing her baby son to his Canadian dad. War brides were wearing fashions that date from before the war. Here Linda is wearing a warm green wool coat with a fur collar and a felt hat. Her young daughter wears a woolen coat and leggings with a matching bonnet to keep her cozy in the Canadian winter. Only 5 years later, Canada entered the Korean conflict. More than 26,000 Canadians served with the United Nations in what is often called the Forgotten War. The Veterans Hospital at the Royal Jubilee was built to treat injured servicemen and women. Joni is wearing an original RJH nurse's uniform from the 50s. It consists of the classic nursing cape made in durable navy wool with red lining. The uniform itself is a one-piece dress in blue pinstripe with short sleeves and buttons down the front. It has a starched white Peter Pan collar, cuffs, a two-piece apron, and a cap with the Royal Jubilee Hospital monogram. Husband overseas in Korea, Gail has formed a support group with other military wives. Today, they are planning to play a game of bridge. Gail is wearing a rayon afternoon dress in dark navy. It has a fitted waist with pearl, rhinestone, and soutache trim on the bodice. She wears it with matching accessories, including a striking picture hat. Imagine the rejoicing when in 1953, the CBC announced the ceasefire that ended the hostilities in Korea. Our troops are coming home.
Yay! They're coming home! They're coming home! They're coming home! Yay!
Let us always be grateful to the men and women who sacrificed their lives and served in so many ways to guarantee our freedom. May we never forget. Our thanks to all the volunteers who participated in this project. Videographer Laura Scotton and her daughter Sedona of 3Ps Photography. Keyboardist Lynn Dennis. Commentator Veronica Campbell. Historical researcher Marianne Kinlock, scriptwriter Linda Scotton, Heritage Productions Coordinator Louise Osselton, and of course, all our lovely models. We hope you've enjoyed viewing this video. Keep an eye open for our next production.